Hello.
Hello. Should we add that now under discussion and questions?
Yeah, if you could. Sorry, I had
worries.
time when I messaged you, but then I didn't after that.
Nope.
Hello. Sorry for the late hello. I had to fix my back. Like, I'm sharing the office now with the rest of the family. So every time I get on camera, I'm like, where did that come from?
Oh dear.
Just video game equipment.
Nice. Hello.
Hello.
Actually, it's 1 minute past, and I know probably people are still going to join, but I'm just going to kickstart. So hello and welcome to the June 6th Maintainership Working Group meeting. I'm going to go over changes since last time. It is a holiday for a lot of people, and so I'll verbalize on those. But Nick, if you want to get us started.
Yeah, so I just took on the first exit criteria to help remedy coverage gaps last week, so didn't get much of a chance to make progress on it, but thanks Michelle for the prompt. Yeah, there's one issue in there right now, and as you noted, a lot of proposed avenues to take. I agree with the comment that you made that we should probably just narrow it down to 5, and I think the 5 that you called out that are also in the trainee template makes sense as a good starting point. And I added some initial thoughts to your prompts there, Michelle, just a little before this call. And yeah, I think focusing on those few projects is a good idea, and then we can hopefully there will be some takeaways that we can gain from that we can then more generalize and apply to projects going forward. So I think there's kind of like, what are we trying to do right now, like identifying the projects that need the most help right now and what can we do for those. And then there's also, like, after this working group, what can we put in place to make sure that we're more easily identifying those, maybe staying ahead of identifying where there may be coverage gaps, and then making sure that the owners and maintainers of all these different projects that we have, regardless of size, have the tools and resources they need to I guess raise visibility and also identify their future needs.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to just repeat what you just said to make sure that I understand. So it sounds like the 5 or so listed here, you think we should slim down, focus on those 5. Any plans or actions that we take related to those 5, we can just reuse in the future for others.
Yep.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks for summarizing that. I do think we could just put out a call to managers, could just be in engineering manager Slack, and just see if there are any other projects that we should consider that we may have missed. So yeah, that would be a next action for this week. And then if we don't get any more feedback on that, we can just keep it to that list.
Okay.
So I just had an idea, you can take it or not, but I've noticed in all the exit criteria and some of the issues for the exit criteria, as we discuss ideas, people propose brand new solutions. And I myself am getting a little lost in, like, okay, what are we actually comparing? What are we actually discussing? And I feel like it kind of blows up the issue, and it's hard. It's not very transparent on, like, what the items that we're focused on. And I just noticed Nick mentioned that we distilled a larger group of options to a smaller group. So I was just wondering if we wanted to create some kind of standardized template for, okay, like a doc or something that says these are the options and these are how we evaluate these options, so that when people have questions as to why we didn't pursue option 507, you can say, oh, we already talked about that. Oh, we already discussed that. Also, if people have suggested options and maybe they missed a meeting or didn't understand why it was we chose not to do it. It gives some more transparency. So just a thought, just wanted to know what you all thought about that.
Yeah, just to see from my understanding, it sounds like perhaps a decision log, like here's a timestamp, what we decided and some of the reasoning behind that. Would that something like that help?
I think that would be good. Anything really to kind of, I just feel like the issues are just kind of blowing up and there's like a new idea almost every other day. And I think at some point we have to say, okay, all the new ideas have to be in by this date. Then we'll evaluate them and then decision log, whatever. But I think we need to kind of get in front of it because I find a lot of people in those issues are not coming to these meetings and they're asking questions that may be answered in these meetings or they just don't have the full context. So something async for sure.
Darva, thinking back to the staff engineer, principal, and that working group, I know there was like a matrix. So do you think for where it's relevant, some of the exit criteria, if we could have a list of here's what we do want to accomplish, here's what we want to not do, like we don't want to make the process less efficient, we do want to make it more efficient, and then we can kind of stack those proposals against, does it make it that, does it not make it this? And then going into Nick's suggestion, that would give us this decision log. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think, yeah, all of the above. I really do. I think it will help with the conversations and the issues for sure. And I think we have to at some point say, okay, by this date, like get them all in because I feel like it'll draw out when we actually finalize and wrap this up. But that's just me, maybe, you know.
So what I can do as an action item is follow up on that this week with the DRIs for each exit criteria and see what do you all think is what we want to accomplish, what we want to prevent doing, and see if we can come up with those to stack proposals against and make decisions on. Max is out. I'll verbalize for him. This is exit criteria number 2. There haven't been changes since the last update. And so this is a copy and paste from last time. Still left to do is build as many of the graphs. He's already got availability graphs. And so he wants to have those as well for additional projects. These additional projects coincidentally go right back to Nick's slimmed down project list. And so there's a lot of overlap there. And then at that point, we can decide how or if we should update the maintainership KPIs. I had a discussion point in here that I deleted in terms of our maintainership. If we know that there's 50% availability on average, our maintainership KPI should probably change to reflect the availability metric. And so that'll be part of that. Robert, if you want to go ahead.
I was out of office for a week and we've had Platinum Jubilee bank holidays here, so I've been catching up today. Before I went, I sort of put a few questions in an issue and asked others to sort of share it out a bit to ask around, well, primarily around the criteria of having to be a maintainer for certain job roles. And I've caught up in terms of reading the existing comments. I don't think we've got a wide enough response yet, really. It's mostly from sort of about 5 or so people, although they are from different parts of the organization in different job roles, which is quite useful. But the general consensus so far does seem to be that no one is super pro having to be a maintainer for being a senior engineer. Personally, I sort of found the same thing, but also the thing I'm worried about is if we do remove it, whether we or how we incentivize people to become maintainers. Because at the moment, the thing that pushes you to do it is that it's kind of a part of your onboarding process, from what I remember as a senior engineer, that you created your maintainer issue, or it's somewhere in that process. But I think I made mine within 3 months of joining for working towards being a maintainer. And if we don't have that criteria, how do we encourage people to become it, if that makes sense? That's something I think we can look at if we do. But if the general consensus is that we shouldn't have it as being a hard requirement, I think that does that would be something we'd have to address first before removing the requirement.
So the doc is locked for me right now, probably my own fault, but I'll verbalize what I was trying to write. I think that a lot of times when people don't like an idea or a process, they speak up. And when people do, they don't say anything. So I think that we need a more like a broader group of set of feedback through like maybe a survey or something like that, because to make a significant decision based on 5 people, I question that. And I also want to remind everyone that this is actually an OKR. And we might have to question, why is it an OKR? Because OKRs are usually driven by like a product need or organizational need. So I feel it's, you know, if let's say we say, oh, it's not required, but it's an OKR. So I feel like they're competing. So I guess what I'm saying ultimately is I think we need more feedback on this, and we should have a survey, maybe. What do you think, Robert?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I will admit that the reason why it was just a question in an issue is because I was rapidly doing it before I went on holiday for a week, and I thought we might get a bit more feedback. So yeah, in that case, I think doing a survey does make sense. It would be nice to get more feedback on it, because it's one of those things that, like, personally, I thought it was a bit weird, but I didn't really care. It's like, if I need to be a maintainer to be a senior engineer, I'll just become a maintainer. I don't have a strong feeling either way. So it's been good to hear from a few people that feel differently, but it would be nice to get it from, you know, 100 engineers or something, just to get a bit wider of a response.
One thing that's been perplexing me is this: a lot of people don't want it to be required, but they feel like it's necessary because they're maintainers themselves. So it almost feels like if it were required, it really doesn't have much of an impact on most people. So it's interesting that people are fine with being a maintainer as long as we don't say that it's required. And I would really be interested in why that is. I don't know that you can answer that, Robert, but it's like a puzzle that I have not been able to solve. Like,
yeah,
I know,
maybe that's,
oh, sorry.
maybe that's where my comment might be useful here, which is I don't see a link to the feedback, but if there's a link to the feedback, it might be useful. But I think we need to understand the concerns. Like, is it that they're worried about decrease in quality? Is it that they're worried about, like, hey, if for some reason I no longer am a maintainer for some stint, is my job in jeopardy, right? Those kinds of questions, right? Like, I think we need to understand a little bit about what might be the underlying concerns here. Because, like, one thing that could be is that they have a true concern that's legit, and we need to figure out how to combat that concern, right? Like yes, we make it required, but here's what we're going to do as well to make that, to address that concern, right? So that might be a way to look at this situation. Is don't treat it as a binary of yes or no. Treat it as a okay, what are the things that what is really driving the reaction more than anything else?
I think I mentioned in a previous call, I had concerns myself about becoming a maintainer when I joined, because I only really like doing it personally when I have deep experience of something, when I know the whole product. And you can't possibly do that with GitLab. Sometimes you do just have to accept or just trust that someone else knows what they're doing. Like, when someone submits a merge request to you for review, you have to assume that they have done that for a reason and not question everything that they're doing, because it would be impossible and it would take everyone so long. And it took me quite a while to get over that. And so perhaps more guidelines around something like that could help, or but that's just my experience personally. And there's still merge requests I get where I just send them off to someone else because I have no idea what this is doing. Someone else is better suited for this. But I don't think we really have any guidelines around that yet, like maintainers handing off reviews to other maintainers, or finding maintainers that are most suited. And as I mentioned in a message with Michelle earlier, that a lot of the workload is really done by the reviewers, who usually are more closely tied to the actual work. And then the maintainer is more of a sign-off like the final sort of approval that just merges it. Perhaps there's more we can write about that, because I think at the moment the guidelines are quite different from that. But yeah, that's just my like my personal experience with it, and it would be nice to have more feedback from other people around it.
Okay, this was a really good conversation. It sounds like the next step is the survey for feedback on your part, Robert. I would also encourage you, outside of feedback, to see if there's any data that can either support or the opposite of support any proposal there. Alex, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Hello. Yes. So there hasn't been a lot of progress on this one either. I also was out for a week last week, and then I've been kind of busy. But Steve Abrams made a proposal to add a yearly audit so that people can circle back and decide. I don't know how well that fits under the trainee process, but it's an interesting idea. I guess it's a self audit for maintainers to just double check that they're still appropriately maintainers of the things that they're maintainers of. And then there's still an issue out there seeking feedback. Though I also added a discussion question at the bottom for later on, where we can maybe sync on some ideas about how to improve the trainee process.
Okay, I'm going to breeze through the next few so that we can get to that. Steve is out of office. He's got exit criteria number 5. He has added a ton of thoughts to this issue that's closed to identify success factors, and he's got next steps identified. For the help needed section, I just wanted to collect all of the help needed from previous agendas. And so we don't need to go over any of these, but here are 4 topics that people have brought to the meetings to ask for feedback asynchronously. And then go ahead, Alex, you can start us with the discussion.
Yeah, so there are a couple of proposals that I've got down here. One is from out of the issue, the trainee consideration for trainee improvements issue, and another issue. Steve Abrams suggested adding a set of maintainers assigned to a trainee that encompass a sort of diverse group of maintainership styles. That way, we can have them send their reviews to a dedicated group and improve that way. That way, when it comes to getting approval, we have a prearranged set of folks who can do their approval. Oh, that was an update I didn't add above. So there was a merge request that merged last week where we changed the requirements for maintainership approval. And instead of requiring 50%, we now require 50% or 5 approvals, whichever is less. So long as there are 5 people who approve, that was done as a way to lower the barrier. So having 5 or 10 people who maybe just 5, having 5 people who are dedicated to doing reviews for a trainee may help improve getting approval when it comes to it, is I think the thought.
And so what you're saying, Alex, is you become a trainee, you get 5 basically mentors kind of assigned to you, and they're going to guide you through the trainee process and then also approve you to be a maintainer at the end.
Yeah, so the other part of that is they would be almost like a set of dedicated maintainers for you to send your reviews to, right? So they would be doing most of your follow-up reviews, I think was the idea. That way you have a group of people who are doing ideally selected in a way that they have different styles and different expertise. But the idea is then you have a group of people who are doing the sign-off reviews who know you really well. So my understanding is part of the problem with backend maintainership, becoming a maintainer there is really difficult because there's so many maintainers that you don't get enough individual attention from, like, you have to do a lot of reviews for people to have a lot of opinions about you. So having a dedicated group helps that that issue.
One thing I noticed when I was doing my trainee maintainer thing was that I was too lazy to put all of the merge requests I'd reviewed into the big issue. And I ended up doing it like 6 months later in one big batch. And by that time, everyone had forgotten what happened in the reviews. And so I was wondering if there's a way of us automating that feedback loop part of it a bit more. So where people have, like a trainee maintainer has made a review, can we automatically give that out for feedback to either, as it currently has been, the ultimate maintainer, or as it would be in this setup with their assigned maintainers? Is there a way of automating that process?
There are tools out there that people have created that, yeah, lets you do that, like add an emoji or something to an MR, and then the script picks it up and then adds the comment to the issue. And I've seen actually a recent trainee I've seen had an issue where it kept getting added, but they assumed that it was also pinging the maintainers, but it was actually adding it to like a code block. So it wasn't actually, so it had the maintainer mentioned, but it wasn't actually pinging them. So I think maybe gathering those tools and making sure folks are aware of them and that they're working correctly could help address what you just brought up there.
Having something like that would have helped me a lot. I think I'd probably have finished my maintainership traineeship months faster, because it was just something I kept putting off until other people noticed that I still hadn't finished it. Because it was one of those things that takes more time than you think to fill out the thing and say, I reviewed this is what I did, this is what, that sort of thing. But if it's immediate and automated, then it could probably lower that threshold quite a bit.
Yeah, I know we have variants of this. The ops team just recently put one in, which I think you can put some type of tag on either an issue or a comment, and then basically they're picking those up and then basically putting that in a summary issue for the week. So then they can kind of see, okay, like highlights, kind of like a highlights kind of thing. So there's definitely ways to do it. We just got to figure out which one we want to do there.
I think the scalability team have something like that actually. Or they've been doing it manually.
It feels like we need to make a variant of that for trainees to basically go back to this issue and tag it, so then therefore I don't have to think about it. It's a great idea.
Yeah, I'll file an issue for collecting existing bots and maybe forging them into a new singular bot. How's that?
Sounds good to me.
That's an action item. We only have a few minutes left, it looks like. But Darva, do you want to verbalize what you've got there?
Just real quick, the group of maintainers that you're speaking of that would be dedicated to review MRs, is this a rotational role, or is this the same dedicated group every time?
That is not a detail that I don't think anyone has fleshed out yet, but that's a very good question.
And the second one is, how are we treating current existing training maintainers who currently do meet the 5 reviews? Are we going to automatically say, oh, you're a maintainer, or are we going to have a conversation with them and ask if they would like to become a maintainer?
So in order to get the 5 approvals, they have to file a merge request making themselves a maintainer, and then ask for maintainers to approve their merge request. So they're already seeking maintainership at that point.
So people who have already been working on it for several months, and they have 5 already.
They file a merge request. Yeah, they don't get the 5 approvals until they've filed the merge request changing themselves. So the approvals in this case are approvals on the merge request changing them to a maintainer.
So this is so everyone's starting with 0.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I think that we do need to stop now. Alex, I would love to, and Okay, yeah, Alex. Okay, so Alex, I would love to move this to the next working group meeting, which is next Tuesday. Because I think the trainee topic is a one that we should tackle. And then Nick down below asked about if there's anywhere for us to collect reviewer maintainer coverage dashboards. I just opened an MR earlier to put all of these associated dashboards into the working group page. What do you think about adding an action item in one of the exit thread, a separate criteria? Are you picking up an action item to add a separate page for these, Nick?
I suppose I am, but I
Okay.
think we can use your MR and the working group page as a starting point for now and see what we collect. So thanks for doing that.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I'll collect the action items that we all talked about and I'll put them in the agenda below. And then otherwise, thank you all very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.